When we think of barbecue, we don't usually associate it with health food, and that's problematic for me because after this holiday season, I gained a few more pounds than I would have wanted to, and I really want to shed those pounds, but I also want to eat barbecue most days of the week like I normally do. So in this video, I am going to develop a barbecue recipe that is jam-packed full of flavor. It still tastes like legitimate barbecue, but it's also going to be healthy for me. And don't worry, I'm not gonna be doing anything super lean like chicken breast or pork loin or anything like that. This is gonna be a legitimate barbecue dish that has a ton of flavor, but it's also healthy. So let's get smoking. The world of healthy barbecue is new to me. I'm used to using everything at my disposal to make my barbecue taste as amazing as possible, and usually that means a ton of sugar. Now, I'm vaguely aware of keto diets and low-carb diets. I think I did the Atkins diet a number of years back. So I know that anything that I need to make, it's going to need to be low in carbohydrates, which means it needs to be low in sugar. And that is going to be probably the biggest challenge. But the problem is sugar is one of the things that kind of makes barbecue barbecue, in addition to, you know, fire and smoke and salt probably being the other ones. But sugar is so fundamentally ingrained in the way that we think about barbecue that it's really hard for me to imagine how I'm going to get good barbecue without having some sort of sugar-based sauce. So I need to figure out two things before I can even get started on this recipe. First one is I need to figure out how to make a sugar-free sauce that still is sweet and tangy and it still tastes like barbecue sauce. The second thing I need to figure out is what is a healthy meat or more healthy meat that I could put that sauce on. So something not too high in fat content, but still has enough fat that it's gonna have some flavor. It's not too lean. So I have no idea where to start out. I have no background in keto diets or the science of making sugar-free sauces or anything like that. So I decided to call an expert.
Hey Dennis, super glad that you took this call. As I was telling you earlier, I just got off the scale a couple days ago after the Christmas holidays, after the New Year's break, and I realized that I gained about 6 or 7 pounds since I last weighed myself. Not feeling too good, so I'm looking for some healthy barbecue recipes that I can use as kind of daily eaters that I can feed to my family and that I can still enjoy. So I want to know, how can I make healthy barbecue that still tastes good?
So one of the things that we all find ourselves come January 1st is, yeah, like you said, we have the holiday 5, we gained weight, and we're trying to find ways to fix the problem. So if you're doing a traditional, or not traditional, but more like a sugar-based, tomato-based, heavy sugar type of thing, you could use any of the low-carb sweeteners, something like allulose, erythritol, and substitute those in. Or you could go with the more vinegar-based sauces. So if you go kind of with the premise of salt, fat, acid, and heat, you can really focus more on sort of the acidity to bring out the flavor. The brown sugar, like Swerve, the brown sugar alternatives are pretty good alternatives to brown sugar.
Do you have any like ideas of how I could make like a rub or a sauce it's sweet, it tastes like barbecue, but it's not as sugar heavy?
You really have to look at the low-carb sweeteners. Something like erythritol, which is pretty much available everywhere now. I know things like allulose tend to be more difficult to find in certain countries and certain areas. I know Canada has issues getting allulose. There are some others like xylitol, but that tends to give people some gastric issues. So you really have to play with it. And that's sort of the unfortunate part, is if you do start going the low-carb, low-sugar, or low-calorie sweetener alternatives, you have to play with it a little bit. It really boils down to experimentation.
Yeah, awesome. So, okay. I think I've got a good direction on the sauce. I'm gonna start moving. I'm gonna do some research into those sweeteners. The more natural, the monk fruit sounded a little bit more natural to me, but I'm also gonna look at those other ones. So now the meat. What can we do with like the meat? The big 4 barbecue dishes in my mind, and I'm like, you know, it's a little bit coming from a competition barbecue background, but brisket, pork butt, ribs, and then chicken thighs.
Chicken thighs are pretty easy to season. You can just use regular rubs and get that cooked, and they're delicious. So I think probably the chicken are probably your best bet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I make an awesome chicken thigh recipe. I haven't done a video on it for years. I did this one video years ago where I recommended smoking chicken thighs at like 225, like low and slow. But the problem with that is that you get rubbery chicken skin. But since then, I've learned a lot in my barbecue journey. So chicken thighs, I think I'm going to narrow down on that, and I'm going to look into those sweeteners that you mentioned. Tell me a little bit about your channel. Who is your channel for? What's it all about? Let me know.
Yeah, so my channel basically focuses, which is Black Tie Kitchen. We focus on sort of healthy cooking and approaching cooking in a fun manner. It's a lot of times you get caught up in having very specific recipes and specific steps, and I'm trying to focus more on showing people how to cook, and I don't want to say cook by feeling, but get into the kitchen, experiment, test, try things, and be willing to fail and actually succeed and find a recipe that works, especially for something like low carb where we don't have the typical ingredients that we have, you know, standardly. Flour. We don't realize how much we use flour until we don't have flour. So trying to come up with biscuit recipes, pizza recipes, it takes a lot of work, but if we're all willing to put in some time, we can come up with some really, really interesting results.
Right on. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Steve. Take care.
See you later. Cool. Thanks a lot, man.
Again, that was Dennis from Black Tie Kitchen. His channel is super awesome. If you guys are looking for low carb lifestyle recipes, then definitely check his channel out. I'll link it in the description section below, so go over there, subscribe to Dennis. And he's also super funny. I can't even explain his humor. You just have to go and watch one of his videos. You'll thank me. It's super funny. All right, so I started my research out with a book that was recently published by Myron Mixon himself, called Keto Barbecue. So I thought this would be a great place to start because I knew that there'd be some sugar-free sauce recipes in there. So I bought the book from Amazon and I read it, and the main ingredient in a lot of the sauces, in all of the sauces, was something called monk fruit. Monk fruit is a sugar alternative. It's something like very low or zero carbs, but it's like 100 times sweeter than sugar. So I didn't have any, obviously, so I had to go to the store to pick up some monk fruit and also a bunch of other ingredients to start testing out some recipes. All right, we're heading to Superstore to get some supplies for my recipe. I'm not gonna film while I'm driving though. So I found this Heinz no sugar added ketchup. We'll see if that works. It's got barely any sugar in it, judging by the carbohydrates on the back, so we'll try it out. So my wife just stopped into HomeSense and we're in the parking lot, and I think I discovered a dad secret. Little guy's fast asleep, so I might be going on these road trips a little bit more often. Now at the store, as you saw, I was able to pick up some awesome stuff, like some really low sugar Heinz ketchup that I'm going to test out with some sauces. I was also able to get some erythritol spiked with monk fruit powder, but I wasn't able to get pure monk fruit powder like Myron Mixon's book recommends. I was also able to get some xanthanol. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but it's another sweetener. And those were the things that I was going to test all of these sauces out with. So I started with doing some of Myron Mixon sauces, and I also did some other random sugar-free sauces from the internet. And I went through the process of testing out a whole bunch of different sauces. After a whole bunch of trial and error, what I found is that all of these sauces were very ketchup or tomato paste based, and they just had some sort of sweetener added to them, even in Myron Mixon's book. And they just tasted to me like kind of vinegar flavored ketchup. It didn't taste like real barbecue sauce to me. So I really was ready to give up at this point. But then I remembered something that Dennis said in the interview that I had with him.
the brown sugar, like Swerve, the brown sugar alternatives are pretty good alternatives to brown sugar.
Brown sugar, that is what Dennis said in the interview, and I didn't realize it until I went back and I looked at it again, but that really keyed something in my mind because I started looking at all the different barbecue sauces in my cupboard, and the main ingredient was, you guessed it, brown sugar. They're usually listed in ingredients in the order of the amount. Brown sugar is the ingredient with the most amount of quantity in all of these different sauces that I had. So I had to figure out a way to get something that is similar to brown sugar, but doesn't actually have any sugar in it. And luckily, Swerve makes a brown sugar substitute product that's made from erythritol, which is the other stuff that I got, was the erythritol spiked with monk fruit powder, but it was in a powder form. But this is mixed with some other stuff that is also sugar-free, that makes it taste and feel in your mouth like brown sugar. So I thought I was onto something with this, and I ordered it from Amazon, and then I started experimenting again. And after a few versions of making this new sauce with the Swerve brown sugar, I finally came up with the perfect barbecue sauce recipe. All right, so here's the recipe. I'll also add it to the description section below, and make sure that you check the description section because I might update and make some tweaks in the description as time goes on. So what I'm about to tell you in the video right now might be a little bit different than what it says in the description. So go by what it says in the description section. First, add half a cup plus 2 tablespoons of brown sugar Swerve, half a cup of tomato paste, 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, put in 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of water just to dilute the ingredients a little bit so it's not so thick, and 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, Worcestershire sauce, whatever. Add 1 tablespoon of that into the mix and then mix it all up. It should already be in a pot, I should have mentioned that. And then put it on the stove. Heat it up until it's almost kind of simmering or bubbling on the stove and all of the ingredients start to dissolve. Pour it into a blender. I'm using a Magic Bullet, but you can also use a Vitamix or whatever kind of blender you have, and blend it really thoroughly for about a minute. Remember what Dennis said in the interview about the erythritol not being fully water soluble.
The other thing is the solubility in water is about 49%. So you can potentially get sort of a gritty texture in a sauce. So you may want to put it through the blender to make it kind of like very thin.
The blender is going to take care of that and it's going to smooth it out a lot more. So this is a very important step. All right, now set the sauce aside on the counter and we're going to move on to our chicken thighs and start prepping them. To prep the chicken thighs, first snip off the excess skin. There's usually a big flap on one side of the chicken thigh that you need to snip off, otherwise it's going to be hanging off and it's not going to be very good. Then put it in a pan. I'm using these aluminum low wall sort of roasting pans. So put them in there. You can also use a low rim baking pan for loaf cakes. Now cover the chicken thighs with rub with no sugar in it. Now I'm not going to go over how I made this rub. Just check out the description section below. Coat it thoroughly all over the thighs and then let them sit out at room temperature for about 30 minutes while you go outside to pre-light your smoker. It was around minus 30 degrees outside, so I decided to use my grill gun to get things going in my Oklahoma Joe's. So I just put some charcoal in there and gave it about 60 seconds of the grill gun, and then it was screaming hot. And then I put the chicken in the smoker and ran it at about 275 to 300 degrees until they hit 165 degrees internal. It took about an hour or just over an hour, but it'll depend on how big or small your chicken thighs are. I also used my meter probe inserted into one of the chicken thighs to monitor the temperature, so I knew I could take it out as soon as it hit 165. After that, I took the chicken thighs off of the smoker and I added just enough chicken broth to cover the very bottom of the pan, so not too much. And then I foiled the top of the chicken tightly and I put them back on the smoker, ran them at 275 to 300 again until they hit around 203 degrees Fahrenheit, about another hour. You'll know when they're done when they probe like butter, and also if you kind of wiggle the end of your probe into the skin, it should tear apart easily. If the skin is not tearing apart easily, then keep on going until it is fully rendered down. Otherwise, you're not going to have bite through skin and you might get rubbery skin. And after they hit 203 and the skin was where I wanted it and the meat was where I wanted it, they come off of the smoker. I transferred them to a new pan. You can just drain yours out of the pan, drain all that liquid out if you want to, but I thought this was easier because I just transferred it right over. And then you want to coat all of the chicken thighs in your sauce. So get your sauce a little bit hot on the stove. You can add some water or apple cider vinegar to thin it out a little bit more so it coats better. And then we want to put our chicken thighs back on the smoker at 225, so lower than before, but we're adding lots of smoke. So in order to do this, it depends on what you're using. If you're using a pellet smoker, just dial it all the way down to like, you could even go to 170. That's going to create a lot of smoke. Or if you're using an offset, just open the vents fully, chuck a fresh split on there so it smokes a little bit more. In this phase, we want to get a lot of smoke, so it's going to attach to the sauce, and it's also going to set up the sauce a little bit more. But be careful, this is not like regular barbecue sauce where it's sugar-based and it's going to caramelize. In this case, it just kind of dries out, and if you dry it out too much, it kind of gets flaky and it's not very appealing. So it's not like you're setting sauce up on ribs or chicken thighs normally. Just put it in there for about 5 or 10 minutes just to get a bit of smoke and to set up the sauce a little bit, dehydrate it a little bit, and then you'll be good to go. Now, when I tried the chicken wings, they were all bite through, so the skin wasn't rubbery and they tasted actually really good. And with only about 80 calories for that entire batch of barbecue sauce that we made, this is a really healthy recipe. And I think I'm gonna make it more often as a daily eater. And I feel like I really accomplished my objective here of having something that was packed with flavor, and it also tastes like real legitimate barbecue. Now, if you guys are interested in chatting more about this recipe or anything else barbecue related, consider joining my Patreon. I'll link it in the description section below. We have a private Discord chat server, and we got a cool, really tight little community that we're growing there, and we're all committed to helping each other get better at barbecue. Go and check it out, and I'd appreciate it if you consider joining my Patreon. Now go and check out this other video. It's going to be a brisket video, and it's going to be full of fat and full of calories, and it's definitely not healthy, but it tastes amazing. Happy smoking, guys.